Hello everybody and welcome to another scenario tier list video. We've done my tier list, we've done Bryn's tier list, and now we are on to Travis's tier list. Bryn and myself are here, but we're here to kind of just facilitate conversation where Travis is going to be leading this video because this is his tier list, and we're not here to tell him his opinions are wrong. We're just here to go, oh, that's cool, that's great, Travis, that's awesome. We're here to just basically be like, Travis, everything you say is 100% correct today. So,
ooh, yes, man, let's go.
why don't we just dive right in following the order? We'll just go chronologically through this, starting with The Gathering.
I would actually like to do the 3 starting scenarios last, I think.
Okay.
I am going to evaluate them on slightly different criteria. I want to see where everything else fits in first.
Sure. Well, my job is to just be a yes man, so I'll say, all right, extracurricular activity, let's go.
Extracurricular activity, this one is saving the students from the blob.
Yes.
This one's like, okay. I think this one is pretty solid. This is like a B for me. This is about what an average scenario is. I'm never like upset that I have to play it, but I'm also never really looking forward to it. You know, it's just kind of there.
Yeah.
I do like the multiple routes to victory. It's one of the first examples of your like choices kind of mattering. Even though they do a little bit of a poor job of that. Lots of things that Dunwich Legacy are like done kind of poorly because it was the first cycle and they didn't really know what they were doing. But it's pretty okay. And this is without return twos, right?
Yes, all this is just base.
Cool, Miss Catacombs seem to go in the trash. This one's like okay the first time, but as soon as you figure out that one person can just sit there and face tank the thing,
yeah,
then whatever, it's garbage. Skip the house always wins. But it can go... The house always wins can go like at the A tier, but it's gonna end up at like the bottom of the A tier.
Okay.
It's a cool scenario for me. I like the gambling aspect of it. And I do like the duality with the extracurricular activity where they change, which I'm sure you guys talk about in your videos.
Yeah, but you can definitely talk about it further. You can repeat things we've said because this might be someone's first. They might just be waiting for the Travis one with bated breath.
All my fanboys.
Yeah.
No, it's a neat scenario. It's a little bit better than extracurricular activity just because the flavor of the gambling, which I understand some people don't like because it can be frustrating. And it does kind of like make your clue person not get to play for the first half. They still have a lot to do in the second half. But I do also really appreciate how like things get so out of control so quickly.
Yeah.
Like you get clues and then the game just kind of goes to shit. So,
on that note, may I ask, because do you also generally have a structure? Do you usually play the house always wins first, or like do you mix it up?
I'll be honest, I don't remember. The last couple times I've played these, I don't make the decisions.
Okay, yeah.
I think that we play the house always wins first, traditionally first.
Yeah.
Because that's what we did when we first played.
Yeah.
So, also it's like, if I remember correctly, it's much more difficult.
Yeah, it is. It is harder than extracurricular activity if you do it second.
Yeah, I think the ally you get from it, Morgan.
Yeah, Morgan.
He's like a little bit more useful.
Yeah, he's the fight one that, and then whenever you defeat an enemy, you draw a card.
Yeah, they're the ones who kind of need the card draw, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Essex County Express. I like this one quite a bit. Blew our minds when it first came out. I'm going to try to evaluate these like a little bit contextually. So like the Essex County, a lot of these have huge design flaws in them. But that was, again, partially just a product of when they were produced. Essex County Express, I think, is also an A tier for me, ahead of the house always wins. It is a fun scenario, but it can definitely just cripple you in the first couple turns with bad Mythos draws, which doesn't make for good gameplay on one hand, but on the other hand, it is also like very ARKHAM-y.
Yep.
It's very, very true to the franchise. Next up, we got the Blood on the Altar. This one's like traditionally the best one from this cycle. I'm not a huge fan of the randomness of the placement of the things because sometimes it makes the game very long and drawn out, and other times it makes it very, very fast.
Yeah, and then
you don't really get to experience it.
yeah, and then sometimes when it's really fast, you like get like bombarded in like 4 Mythos cards at once, and like sometimes that can just be, it's like, oh, that's not
overwhelming.
fun. Yeah.
So this is going to be an A+ for me. It is probably objectively the best scenario from this cycle. But is probably going to end up like low A+. I do like it fits into the story really nice, and it is a good time to be able. It was a good depiction of of the village of Dunwich and exploring it, and how the people who live there all like hate you.
Yeah.
Because you're not one of them. So, and the kidnapping thing is fun, even though it's like very rarely relevant.
Yeah, and because there also always just takes that bullet for you.
Yeah. On Dimension Unseen, this one can go in the trash can as well.
Is it further below or further above in the trash can?
It is above the Miskatonic Museum because at least everyone gets to play, even if it sucks, and they get to play. And man, do they ever get to play!
Yeah.
It's like 2 hours of grinding your face into 4 or 5 copies of the same enemy.
Yeah.
I like the mechanics of it, where they're like, oh, you have to put clues on them to like do things to reveal the invisible beasts to make them actually attackable, and the using brain instead of traditionally fighting is a nice little twist. But it is tough for some investigators. You're later in the campaign, your fighter might be getting cool weapons that they are unable to use. Your mystic might be just like, can you damage them with spells, or is it only with the formula?
I believe it's only with the formula.
Yeah, okay. And your mystic's still probably having a good time because they have high brain.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not the worst scenario in the game, but it is pretty bad. Mostly because it takes 2 hours to play.
Yeah.
Where Doom Awaits, this one is also D tier because I have to set it up and usually sort out the cards after.
Where do you want it in your D tier?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
It's definitely better than the other two. Like, it's a better scenario. There is the issue with the intellect. I believe it is to the book test to move up, and if you don't have someone who has high book, you're just screwed.
Yeah, that was a pretty bad error. Like a design error the first time through.
Yeah, and I like that they pull in counter sets from all over the cycle for it, but I do not like how big the deck is. There's just too much variance in it, where like sometimes you just have Mythos draws let you cruise through, and other times you just get crushed.
Yeah, definitely.
Next up, we got Lost in Time and Space. I like this one a lot. I think it's really cool. The location mechanic is a blast for me. Yeah, it's going to be an A+. It's going to be one lower than Blood on the Altar, though, because I recognize that it is probably, on its own, a worse scenario than Blood on the Altar. Being able to kill Yog-Sothoth or defeat him through damage is like a little bit of a downer for me.
I think Bryn said the same thing.
Yeah, like in terms of the mythos, Yog-Sothoth is like one of the very few that you shouldn't be able to kill through damage in any sense. Like, Yog-Sothoth doesn't really exist physically. Same with the Nameless Mist and Azathoth, of course. So, but it's a fun scenario. It's really cool going into space, and if you're playing the game chronologically, it is a very suitable finish to the campaign.
Oh, definitely. All right, Path to Carcosa.
Curtain calls is Big Butt Baby.
Big Butt Baby.
This one's pretty good. I think this one gets an A for me. Higher than, yeah, right about there. It might be lower than SS Can Express. I'll think about it a bit, but for this one, fighting Big Butt Baby is a good time. Again, it has that sort of pacing that I like from the House Always Wins, where everything is like kind of normal-ish. In this case, it's like vaguely creepy. and then big butt baby spawns and things get real tough real fast.
Yeah.
You gotta make some big decisions, especially if you don't know what's coming. I do like the variability a lot between what's happening in the theater with the different acts. Again, it's not like a super good scenario or anything like that, but it doesn't have any like glaring flaws. If I remember correctly, the poltergeists are kind of annoying, but what can you do? Last King's up next. This one is a C tier. I like that. I like the premise of it. Like, this is probably an A or an A plus with Return to for me. But being able to just like kill Miss Divine.
Yeah.
And also the fact that like she just sits on someone with no clues. It's kind of like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, like those two glaring flaws drag it down a lot for me. That being said, the scenario itself is cool. You get to go around, and it does suffer a little bit, I suppose, from getting clues is like not super useful. But most of the tests, the parley tests, are brain or book tests. I do like the flavor behind that they only want to talk to you if you like have something they want, kind of a certain quality that they want. And also them turning into monsters is pretty fun. And the interlude after, of course, is a great time. Though I kind of am like, anytime you play this with people and they choose the resolution that's like
not burning them alive.
Well, yeah, burning them alive is objectively right. Burning them alive is kind of disappointing because then they don't understand why that would be a good idea.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair.
And also, I think the most fun option, the only like quote unquote fun option, is to go back in and intrude on the meeting, because that one actually like characterizes the story. Whereas the other ones are just kind of like, we left, and then the other ones we kill everyone because we're definitely normal people and not psychopaths.
Yeah. That's a whoopsie.
Yeah. But Echoes of the Past. This one is the
Historical Society, Whack-A-Mole.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I can only think of what we call it when we play Arkham 2nd Edition for a second there.
Yeah.
And that is not appropriate. It is... This one's pretty dirt. This is another C tier for me. Lower than The Last King, because like The Last King is like potentially be good, and there's just some design overflaws or oversights in it.
Yeah.
And Echoes of the Past is just kind of... Echoes of the Past, it's an easy scenario if you can get the two guys at the top dead in the first turn or two, and if you cannot, then it is a very short scenario and a very difficult scenario.
Yeah.
So I don't like the coin flippiness of it, especially if you're not prepared for it. And all in all, it's just like it feels like a filler scenario.
Yeah, it's kind of boring.
Yeah, you're just going around, you're looking through the Historical Society. It's kind of neat that they are kind of, the Seekers of Carcosa are like kind of ignoring you and looking for it on their own.
Yep.
I like that part of it, but overall it's pretty boring.
Now that you put that...
The end, and this is the one with like the secret room and stuff, right? And then
yes.
like the sludge guy.
Yep. Classic sludge guy.
Yeah. No, this one's not very good.
No, I agree.
Unspeakable Oath. Is Asylum.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know the names of them very well.
Yeah.
But this one is... This one's an A plus for me, and it's gonna go right between the other two. There's a lot to like about this scenario. It is fun, it is flavorful. Running around the asylum doing crazy things is a good time. Murdering people that you are unsure whether they are actually monsters or not is a good time. Going down to the dungeons of the asylum that a 1920s asylum assuredly has. Very flavorful. Just starting fights and lighting stuff on fire is a good time. Seeing the monsters crawl out and then having to escape at the end. I do. On one hand, I really enjoy you can get locked in the asylum, but on the other hand, it is very not fun if you're like a casual player and not in it for that.
Yep.
Especially if like if everyone gets caught, you know.
Yeah. That would be a bit of a big bummer.
Yeah, like this campaign doesn't really have a huge, like, it cripples you pretty hard for the last half of the campaign because there isn't like a big experience catch-up scenario.
Except oddly enough, the first time we played a Phantom of Truth, we got like 8 experience, and we've never done that good again.
Yeah, like it's possible, but it is
hard.
very difficult to balance because you don't want to. I kind of wish that, like, as part of the resolution, the new investigators got experience or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would have been that's a good idea.
Because it's really tough to give catch-up experience to keep you, like, not get crippled by or beaten down by the back half of the campaign.
Yeah.
Without letting people who just did good on this scenario do even better in Snowball.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to like about the scenario. And that's why it's in the A+ tier. And the obvious thing is just like, don't get trapped in the asylum.
You hear that, Bryn?
Yeah, it'd be nice to have like that, or like an alternative where one of the investigators like gets to pick to sacrifice themselves or something like that.
Yeah.
So, what we got next here?
Phantom of Truth. This is the organist.
Yeah, chase the man around. This one I like a lot. This is an A. I like the flavor of it more than the actual gameplay. The gameplay itself can get pretty stale.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely better than Curtain Call, though.
Boom.
Which we might be shifting some of those down to B tier, seeing how it's looking. But I like how it's different depending on whether you're doing the doubt or conviction path, chasing her around versus running away from him because you're scared. But yeah, the gameplay itself of it is like a little bit meh. The map's like reasonably large, and they include like the rail system to move around, but quite often it's just not.
Yeah, do you ever even do it? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that, like, I understand why it's there, but it doesn't be there, you know? But then it's also like, if it's not going to be there, then what are you going to put there?
Yeah.
It is a fun scenario, though. Again, the two different versions of it give it quite a bit of replayability. But again, it's nothing like truly special, you know?
Can I ask a question? Because I'm kind of curious what you think. Because
yeah,
the Phantom of Truth is one of the few scenarios, because normally when you level up your deck through a campaign, you get weaknesses in there just randomly drawn, right? A Phantom of Truth is one of the few that adds a specific campaign-based weakness to your deck. Do you like that? Would you like to see more of that, or do you think that's a bit... I want to know your thoughts on that. I'm just thinking about it now. I'm curious.
I really like the campaign-based weaknesses. I like the inclusion of like the class of Black Onyx actually more in the base version of Carcosa than the Return to. I think it would fit in really good with the flavor of driving the players, whether they're going insane.
Yep.
To have it like not actually do anything.
It's kind of an unrelated question, but now with the new release cycle, like the new release thing, they might be able to do more of that. I think it's cool. I like it that like it's a flavorful weakness as opposed to just here's a random madness, paranoia, or like packed weakness, right?
Yeah, sometimes those are appropriate.
Yeah.
But again, it depends on the situation. Like they're a nice way to punish the players for losing the scenario without like crippling them.
Yeah.
Like it's a nice way to punish people for losing the Essex County Express, for example, because like they accept that, hey, you're probably just you might just get like your legs broke by the encounter deck and not be able to recover. And like, yeah, you failed, but like your campaign's not over or anything. You just take this little baby weakness, you take your trauma, and you go on your way.
Yeah.
The Fam of Truth is the one that like is Lost Soul, right?
Yeah, and it's Conviction or Doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, that one I'm not a huge fan of just because of how complex it is and it requires like bookkeeping, kind of.
Yep.
You just have to check it every time someone draws it. But in general, I like the idea.
Cool.
That one I think is like a little bit fiddly.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good question.
Thank you. The Paladin Mask is the Catacombs.
Okay, Catacombs is also going to get an A. We're going to put it below the Fan of Truth for now. And we're going to slide the Curtain Call, Essex County, and House Always Wins down to B tier, please. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I know which ones I like more than other ones, but I don't. It's hard to just quantify them by letter.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Catacombs. Building the Catacombs is really fun. I like the skull motif. Not a huge fan of like there's just old men down there or whatever. Mechanically, it makes for a good part of the game. Though I kind of wish like instead of just looking at a thing and having to murder them again after, it was like if you parlayed with them twice, they'd leave or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you could test like book 3 or book 5, and if you pass the book 3 test, you get to do the looking at a thing. If you test the pass the book 5 test, you get to look and they leave.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But overall, this one's a fun one. Playing around with the bunch of this one is like actually like the island deck done kind of right in my opinion.
I agree.
It's not a nightmare to set up. And you still get that sense of progression as you're going through it.
Mm-hmm.
Massive replayability because of it.
Yeah.
Again, this one go higher than the Fan of Truth, I think, actually. The things I don't like about this one, getting out can be tough and kind of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the myriad of ways. I don't like the scenarios where you have to like get out afterwards because it becomes so easy when you know you can just put cards in your deck to ignore it after.
Yeah.
Like if you know the campaign, it's so much easier to get out. I'm not a huge fan of that. It also makes movement effects like quite a bit stronger, even though they're already absurdly strong.
Yeah.
It does. To be fair, it does make evasion a little bit more valuable, which is nice. Because evasion in general is like not garbage, but it's like subpar. You'd rather have somebody who can just kill monsters rather than try to evade them all scenario, right? So,
yeah.
And yeah, this one's like a fun one. It doesn't have any major glaring flaws, but it also doesn't blow me away.
Cool.
In any real context, so.
Black Star's Rise, this is where we have to go up or down. To the cathedral or down into the waters.
I like this one quite a bit. I like going into the castle. I like one thing I really like about the Carcosa campaign in general is how it's all like real places.
Yeah.
That's really neat. I think my only actual complaint about Black Star's Rise is that I wished whether the gate is above or below mattered more.
Mm-hmm.
This one can also get an A. I think. It's it can set ahead of the Paladin Mask. I think. This one is like a little bit tough in that it is a coin flippy version. It's also one of the few scenarios that I like base better than I do for the Return to. Because the Return to you can get stuck.
Yeah, it adds that one card, right? That's what the Return to does?
Yeah, Haster's Gaze. Yeah, I think this is like a very, very suitable penultimate scenario It is kind of like Where Doom Awaits done correctly, where you get like the monster enemies and the cultists coming together, and the man in the pallid mask obviously shows up, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think he's just in your deck in this one. I could be wrong,
Really?
though.
I thought he spawned on like the second tower when you move in for the second half, but
Maybe. He might.
I could be wrong too. And then like you're trying to figure out where the gate is and get through there before bad stuff happens. And like there's another one where things get I say it's like Where Doom Awaits done correctly because it gets progressively worse. We start off with just the cultists, and as they do their thing and the gate opens wider and wider, like the actual monsters, like the Beast of Aldebaran, can potentially come out.
I do also like how this one actually feels like Conviction and Doubt actually is like, it's depending on how you play. Like if you go all in, that's Conviction. If you wiffle waffle, it's Doubt, and I think that's pretty clever.
Yes, this one it plays into that like metagame wise very very well. This one I think is just like a really good all around. It shows off the themes of the campaign really well.
Yeah,
and mechanically it's also good, not great, but like good. So, and then we got Dim Carcosa. This one's sweet. This one is an A+. This one is better than Blood on the Altar, I think. This one is really cool because, like, I almost wish that they had two scenarios in Carcosa, just for how much they build it up. But I also understand why they don't. Apart from that, I love the different endings, the different kinds of hasters depending on your doubt and conviction. I really like the layout. I find it very pleasing, which is like a pretty shallow compliment, but the story events where you get to see bits and pieces of the King of Yellow itself and really start to explore the flavor. If I had like one complaint about this one, it's that it's it's probably the easiest final scenario.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It's a little subjective, but it is still difficult enough that sometimes you don't get to like sit back and appreciate all of the Carcosa lore they dump on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like reading the story cards for that one reminds me a lot of the Dream Years one, where you're like, man, I kind of just want to like read them all.
I'm excited to play the custom Dark Matter I did because it's also Haster themed and it explores some cool stuff too. I think you'd dig it.
That one got the pass from you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this one's a good one. I don't think it's quite an S tier yet. This isn't one that I'm like active. I mean, like I'm excited to play it. I look forward to it, but if I was like pick your favorite scenario, I wouldn't say this one's a contention. So
cool. All right, into the jungle, Travis. The Untamed Wilds.
I like this one, kind of. This is the one where you're just exploring and trying to find the temple, right? You go through and you find the...
Yeah.
Okay, this one is a solid high B. We're going to put it ahead of Curtain Call to be more generous to the Forgotten Age, because it's going to be a tough one. But I think they're both equal in how much I like them. This one is good because it's your first introduction to exploring the jungle. It feels like you're going through... It does a really good job of selling the Indiana Jones going through the temple looking for the... going through the jungle looking for the temple sort of thing that they've got going on, that they present this campaign as, in my opinion anyway. They ask you to pick a side with like...
The right choice or the wrong choice.
Your job characterizing them.
Yeah, definitely.
Where Chaka's like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this. And you're like, hey, but I want to. And Alejandra's like, we should kill them.
Yeah, kill them. Kill them right now.
It's like, you don't have to be I really feel like they could have characterized him a little bit better.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things I think the rest of the campaign suffers a bit from. But all in all, this is like a solid. The Explore deck still kind of sucks. It's improved a lot with the Return to, but just in the base one, Explore deck kind of sucks. But you're not tired of it yet. You're not tired of setting it up yet. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
Next one, Doom of Vesely. This one can also just like... Actually, this one goes slightly ahead of it. This one does a good job as well of selling the Indiana Jones trope where you're going through the ruins and you're looking for the MacGuffin and then you find it and then like traditionally it's a giant boulder chasing you down, but in this one it's just the temple crumbling. I do wish they kind of had a more elegant finish to it if you didn't get out, where they're just like, you want to blow it up. You're like, yeah, and then you find the thing. I think that's a little bit silly, but this one is also one where you can play it again if you want, right? Or is that the previous one?
This is the turn back time.
No. Like, there's one where you can you have the option to play it again. I think.
I honestly actually can't answer that question. I've never done that.
Yeah, I know, right? It's not. I think that the choice at the end of this one is to play it again or to blow up the temple and just take the relic. But I don't remember exactly. Anyway, why would you choose to play this again? It sucks. Not like the scenario sucks, but like you just spent an hour and a half playing it, and you're just like, I guess we'll try again, right? If you'd asked me like a year ago, we had done this, I would have ranked this one lower because it can kill your entire team. That's super punishing and not fun. But on further reading the cards, after playing this one with my family, it turns out it's actually super hard.
Yeah, it's really hard
to get killed.
We were trying to get killed.
Yeah, like if you're just going around killing snakes and then do poorly and then Doom of Vesely, like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But next one, Threads of Fate. This one is
this is back in ARKHAM and a million Act and Agenda decks.
Yeah, no, I remember this one. Oh yeah, man. This one that's perfect for this one. It loses quite a few points on having to do the setup. Also, this is like a personal pet peeve for some scenarios, is that I don't like the ones that require you to make decisions in the interlude beforehand that affect setup, because then you can't just set it up and go through it. You have to like actually read through it and be like, here, make this decision.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's a lot easier to like have one person like set up the game while the other people decide on their upgrades or whatever. But that being said, this one is kind of just like, in my opinion, slightly inferior Midnight Masks. Still very good. Not quite so much replayability. Where like, I mean, there is a lot of replayability, but we make the same choices every time. So
yeah, we do.
That one we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot on that one, but yeah, no, this one's like, there's not too much to say about it. It's just good.
Yeah. The Boundary Beyond.
This one is like low A for me, I think. And I'm not giving it any points because it's got cute snake lady ant. I like the timelines overlaying thing. This is also like the first introduction where you're really like, Ishtaka isn't just like random native lady, where she's got something else going on. It's a very difficult scenario, don't get me wrong, but I also feel like it's I would rather play a scenario like this where I know it's going into it going into it, it's going to be difficult, and play a middling scenario like the Essex County Express, where like it could be a cakewalk or you could get kneecapped. Yeah, I like exploring. I like all the locations and exploring it. Again, it can be frustrating, but I think it is overall like a fair scenario for what you're trying to get out of it. If it was like, if you were routinely getting 5 or 6 pillars or whatever, 5 or 6 locations, finishing it, that would be kind of what's the point of having the scenario? The next scenario, anyway. Yeah, like overall, I think this one is it's a tough scenario, but it's like a fair scenario, even if it doesn't feel like it while you're playing it. I like the characterization and how it moves the story forward. My only complaint about the story part for this one is like it doesn't quite fit in with the rest of it. But like you have to know a little bit. It takes a lot more thinking than I think the story should to figure out like how it's relevant to the overarching story. But all right, what we got next here?
Heart of the Elders Part 1.
Bottom of D tier, please.
D, I heard D, right?
Yeah, bottom of D tier.
Okay.
This one's trash. You have to play it a million times. Actually, though, I think this one is better than like Miskatonic Museum and Undimensional Insane. We can slide up a little bit. Yeah, right there. The scenario itself is not awful. What is awful is playing it a million times, not being punished for just restarting it to try and get the opening that you want. And this one, I think, is like our pains are really colored by our first playthrough where we had to play it like 4 or 5 times or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this scenario in particular is the one that contributes a lot to the setup and the explorer and the jungle theme fatigue
Oh, yeah.
of this campaign. It kind of single-handedly brings the campaign down, and that is why it is garbage. Heart of the Elders Part 2 is pretty okay. I can get like high C. It's not like a particularly inspiring scenario. It's actually like half a scenario realistically, but it does a good job showing off some of the things that are depicted in the story that one of the stories that the Forgotten Age is based off of, the Mound.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about like Nakai, or not Nakai, that's like the really dark place. Or the city is that's underneath there. It's been a while since I read that story. Yeah, it's like a fine scenario. It's splunking, which is... This is another one that suffers a lot from Heart of the Elders Part 1, where you just spent how long playing Heart of the Elders Part 1. You're like, surprised, there's more to this scenario.
Yeah.
It's basically the same thing with a different coat of paint.
Yep.
Right. But overall, it's like... not awful.
City of Archives.
Yithians.
Yep.
Yes, I remember you. This one gets to live in A. Above Black Star's Rise, though. This one's a really fun one. Being able to play as the Yithians is a great time. The reason it's not an A+ or an S, it loses points on, is that it can have people permanently stuck as Yithian, which is fun if you're playing the campaign for like the millionth time and you're just like, haha, wacky times. But if you're playing through this with people who are only intend to play the campaigns once because they haven't been playing this game for 4 years, and they're like, what do you mean I have to play the last half of the scenario crippled because I'm a Yithian now? It also like very heavily favors, like this scenario is kind of a joke if you are a skill-based investigator. The last time I played through it, I was playing Amanda Sharp, and it was...
Oh my god, that would be incredible.
It was a joke.
Yeah.
Like, it actually just cruised through it. And I don't like it kind of incentivizes you to play a certain kind of card or a certain kind of deck, which I'm not a huge fan of. But the rest of the scenario, though, really cool. Exploring the Sea of Archives, seeing all the Yithians. The flavor behind it's really neat. Having to go around and collect the different things. It is a little bit tough that that requires like clues to draw cards at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Admittedly, you don't have to have that many if you're willing to plan around it. But like if you're playing like for example, a red investigator, who's relying on like a couple copies of winging it and maybe look what I found to get their clues. And other than that, you're like fighting. It can, and you spend them early because you don't really know what's coming in the second half. It can feel really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But
this is something that I didn't have on my tier list, but we recently played this as part of our draft, and it actually convinced me now I would love to bump it up a whole tier list on mine to also A, because what's really fun about this one is that it's kind of like a blank slate of balance, right? Because it's balanced around the Yithian, right? So
the Yithian card.
You really get to like actually play this scenario. Like, yeah, obviously, like there's like your skill-based decks are better, right? But because it's balanced around your 2/2/2, and then assuming all of your cards are an unexpected courage, it's kind of like a flat power level, and it's like it's like, so you can be in that position where it's hard to, like, you don't have clues, but you can maybe get those clues easier because of the shrouds are all 2 as opposed to 4, right?
Actually, a lot of the shrouds in this one are like 3 and 4, but
yeah, but there are some that like in the later part of the game where you can go get one that's like the one I did, which was 2, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah. No, there's like ways to play around it. It's just like, I mean, it's still an A-tier scenario, a high A-tier scenario. It's still a great scenario, don't get me wrong. It's just there are certain situations that can feel really bad for people. Yeah. Also, like, you show up with a pendant, and they're like, here you go, infinite hand size. You're like, cool.
All hail the Yithian god with his pendant.
Yeah, you're like, thanks. That's really good.
Yeah.
I'm glad I spent the off point is actually very possibly best spent here, but I don't know.
All right.
For that.
All right, Travis. Depths of Yoth is next.
This scenario is sick. This is my first S tier scenario.
Boom. S for snake.
Yeah. Everything about the scenario is like really fantastic. It is suitably difficult for being the penultimate scenario. You get to fight Yig, which is a nice change of pace, where you don't know what's actually coming in the last scenario. Yig is here now. It does a great job of making you feel like you were being chased by the snakes. It has fantastic solo playability. It's got like a high score mode. The Explorer set for this one is actually not as miserable as you might think it is. Well, with having to do it on every floor, they do a good job of sort of streamlining it.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any downsides to this scenario? The only one I can think of is the last time I played this one. We got into a position where 2 people were trying to get clues and defeat a single snake, and the other 2 of us were busy spending 3 actions a turn evading 7 enemies.
That would do it.
Actions per each. That can be tough, but like, it feels really good when it works out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scenario is like actually just great. Mm-hmm. It does a really good job of characterizing the descent into Yoth. Again, fits in with the Mount story very well. I know I said before, but like, the feeling of being chased is really strong and present and good. There's always that tension. I guess a point against this scenario is that it can take a long time to play. This is like a 1.5 to 2.5 hour scenario, depending on how many people you've got in your group.
Mm-hmm.
But unlike the End Dimensions Unseen, you're playing this one, and then at the end you go, wow, this took me, that was 2.5 hours, huh? Whereas playing on Dimensions Unseen, you're like, oh god, it's been 2 hours.
Yeah, it's because the pace and Depths of Yoth is like light years better than the pace of Undimensioned and Unseen.
Yeah. This scenario does have things I would consider flaws, but they are very shallow and quite easily overlooked in favor of its positives. So, sick. Great scenario.
Shattered Aeons.
This one's an A+ for me. I think it goes above, below, on the altar. We'll see if I talk myself out of that, but...
I mean, I think it entirely depends on what you're trying to do with this scenario, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I like about this scenario, and there's a couple things I don't like. Things I don't like, formless spawn kind of sucks. It just like shows up and it's a big pile of HP, and then you have to kill it again later, and it just sits there. And so like the formless spawn makes sense because it makes sense from a lore perspective that it's there at the in the depths of Yoth. If you would like to know why, go read the Mount. I won't spoil the entire story for you, but it's just like needless difficulty, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
But I absolutely love being able to go to all of the different worlds and timelines in this one. I think this is a fantastic way to show off a bunch of the not quite Lovecraftian, but actually more like ARKHAM files visions of other worlds and other times. Going to those different ones is like very strong nostalgia for me for playing Arkham 2nd Edition and Elder Tor.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that there are the alternate endings where you're like, hey, being a snake wouldn't be so bad. Or like, Alejandro, I understand that you... After Taka like starts attacking, you're like, Alejandro, I understand why you want to murder them all. And then you could be a Yithian forever. Because, like, honestly, being the State of Archives is like a pretty good place.
Yeah,
it's a pretty cool place, you know. So I don't think it's like... The only thing I don't like about it is like it feels kind of bad to pick one of their endings.
Mm-hmm.
On replays anyway. The first time through, I do like how there is... It kind of pushes you towards them where you like can't have the best ending unless you were kind of applying for it or just stumbled into it. The turn back time one. But yeah, no, I think that's a good place for it.
Cool.
It's a very difficult scenario, but like it's a very... I think that our opinions of it as a group might suffer a little bit from
our
it
hell
coming
run?
right after the depths of Yoth.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
Because the depths of Yoth is like a really high.
Yeah.
Right? Also, there's that one time we played this like 9 times over 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we just like couldn't beat it. That was pretty awful. But yeah, overall, I think it's a really good scenario. I think that it like finally giving a use to the relic is... It really puts the rest of the story into context, ties things up really nicely. It's a suitable end of the campaign.
All right. Disappearance of the Twilight Estate.
I actually played this one 2 days ago.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It was pretty tough. So, my dad was playing the secretary guy.
Yep.
He starts in the location with Nether Mist. This is anecdote time to lengthen the video. But he started on the location with the Nether Mist and the Obscuring Fog. And he's like, hey, first action, I'll play my Hyper Awareness. And then he's like, well, I can get through this fog if I commit my Curiosity. And because we also had Paint White in the game, there's also the Treachery that starts in play with all locations have Haunted, take a Horror.
Okay, yeah.
So he commits his Curiosity to investigate and pumps up with his remaining resource into the Hyper Awareness, because the biggest shit was -4. Draws the autofail, takes a heart and 2 brains, and discards a card from his hand, because that's what that location does. Haunted.
Yeah.
And then Nether Mist attacks him, and then he commits another Curiosity and draws the autofail again.
Okay, yeah.
And then like the Spectral Watcher moves next turn. His and then Mythos Phase, his bad card is like Watcher's Grasp.
Okay, yeah.
The Watcher comes and smacks him, and then he tries to evade. The Watcher fails, and the Watcher kills him because he drew the autofail a 3rd time.
Man, he was cursed.
It was actually awful.
Yeah.
This one is... I'd like a lot more if I have pull cards in my collection. I'm going to give it a ID.
High D?
Yeah, like lower than We're Doom Waits, because We're Doom Waits is like actually kind of an okay scenario.
Yeah.
This is never one that like I would choose to play on my own time. But it is. This one's tough because it's like not a real scenario, and like the setup for it is awful, but actually playing it is not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually like an okay time. Actually, we'll pop it down in low C for that, bottom of C tier. Because like actually playing it is kind of fun to like try and figure out how you can do the best you can with the limited resources you have. Mm-hmm. You're partially at the mercy of the chaos bag, but all in all, it's like it's okay.
Sick.
It's okay.
The Witching Hour.
This one is...
You're in the woods and there's witches and everyone's separated at the beginning. Yeah.
This is a pretty good one. This one can go live with the... It's better than like the Forgotten Age and Curtain Call starting ones. I think this one can live above the house always when it's below the train scenario. The witch thing can get like a little bit overwhelming, as well with the like pseudo random connections.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a very thematic starting scenario, I think, where you have to start like by yourselves. One of the big negatives for this one is like the randomness at the start, where sometimes you can just get screwed on which location you start on.
Yeah.
Also, like if you're playing with a high player count, you probably have someone who's a dedicated monster fighter, and they show up and they're just like, I guess I'll wait for you guys to advance the game. The rest team's like, yeah, hopefully I don't draw a monster.
Yeah. Oh my god, is that a Dark Young?
Yeah. It's like fine. It does a good job of introducing the witches. And like placing you in the story where like it gives you a reason to like meet them, and then but also they're not immediately antagonistic towards you.
Yeah.
So at this doorstep, this is Joseph Manor, right?
Yeah.
It's direct follow-up to the Disappearance of Twilight State. This one's also pretty okay. I think I like this one more than the train scenario. The mechanics on this one like are a little bit busted, where like you can carry Joseph through the ghost, but he's like shooting you or punching you as you go.
Yeah, let me go.
And I kind of hate that. But it is really neat that the ghosts like hunt the Silver Twilight people, and I think it's a suitable difficulty for it is in the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does a neat job of making like unlike the Witching Hour one, where they're just like they start off neutral towards you, this one lets you start like slightly positive or slightly negative in the eyes of the Silver Twilight Lodge, depending on how many people you let die.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it is a very nice follow-up to the Disappearance of Twilight Estate, where realistically you're going to play this one like not too long after it, and you're going to recognize it all, and you're going to be like, oh, this is the same place.
Yeah.
Right?
Whoa, we were just here.
Neat, secret name. Which one's this one?
Rats.
Oh, rats. Oh, Jenkins. This one's like... This is better than Save Archives. This one's a fun time. Killing Ratman for clues is a good time.
Yep.
Hunting him down. Really like that. They do a good job making the rats scale in this one as well. I'm a big fan of turning a mundane enemy into like the entire scenario's theme, and like they actually do a good job of it. So it really feels like the swarms of rats are getting bigger and bigger. You're like, man, I'm actually not sure if I can handle the next one.
Yeah.
But also, you feel kind of stupid. You're like firing off your flamethrower into a group of rats, and you're like, is this really what I bought this for? And this one has like the second half that you in particular always forget about, right, Justin?
No, that's the Boundary Beyond. I always forget about that one. The Secret Name I do know. It's the one where you go through the different times and spaces and until you find the witch ritual.
Oh yeah, that part's like kind of garbage. As evidenced by I don't really remember it that well. And I'm gonna say that's what keeps this from being A+.
Mm-hmm.
But killing Ratman's really fun. I like that. I like that a lot.
The Wages
of Sin. This is the Hangman's Hill one.
Yeah,
sort
the
of.
Heretics. Yeah.
Yeah, this one's garbage. This can go live in the D tier. This is worse than Where Doom Awaits, but better than Heart of the Elders. Undimensioned Scene is also better than Heart of the Elders because it actually ends.
There we go.
Yeah, Wages of Sin. This one is like just super generic and boring in my opinion. It suffers from a lot of the same issues that Undimensioned Unseen suffers from, where like there's a whole bunch of enemies and they all look the same and they all function nearly identically.
Mm-hmm.
It's also like very RNG dependent how many you're gonna get. So
yeah,
I don't have too much to say about this other than it sucks and I feel like I'm slogging through this scenario every time I play it. So.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing about the Wages of Sin is the location art that changes from when it's haunted or not. That part's cool.
That is very cool, actually.
Yeah. For the greater good, you're going into the Silver Twilight Lodge, and there's a puzzle box that we opened easily the first time, but never again.
This one is an A+ scenario. I love this one, actually.
Yeah, this one's good.
I look forward to playing this one. I'm like, oh yeah, every time this one's up next, I'm like, yeah, this one's a cool one. This gets to live above Threads of Fate. Yeah. It's not quite as cool as the other ones in this tier, but mechanically this is a very good scenario, I think. It does a lot to develop the story and characterize the Silver Twilight Lodge. I really like that depending on which person you've sided or which group you've sided with, it's like an entirely different scenario, almost.
Yep.
The only like real complaint I have about this scenario is that they don't include like little, like would it really have been that hard for them to print like 4 more cards and have them be the keys?
Mm-hmm.
But no, this is it's been a while since I've played this campaign, but from what I remember, I always have positive feelings about this one. It's always a good time. I like it.
I just played it last week, and my mood on it improved. That's one thing I should also say for all the viewers. These lists can there could be little fluctuations every time we play them. This is just like a snapshot of what we think right now. Because
if I play this scenario and I had like an awful time playing it, there's a real chance it could be like if I played the Secret Name and had an awful time, got swarmed by the rats and could never kill them, I could be like, rat skin mechanic sucks.
Yeah. Put it in the B tier.
Yeah. But
Union and Disillusion. So this is on the Unvisited Isle when you're lighting the braziers or turning them off.
It's like the circle action one, right?
Yes.
Yeah, this one kind of sucks. Is this also the one where you can get the early ending?
Yes.
Yeah, this is a C tier scenario. I don't like that they cut you off. Like, it is kind of neat that you can have like an early ending if you are with the Silver Twilight Lodge, like all in.
Mm-hmm.
It is like very flavorfully ARKHAM, but like gameplay wise, it's not. Again, if you're playing with a group who isn't going to play these over and over again, it's the same thing as with the City of Archives. Where like it's neat if you're just playing it, because why not? You've played every other scenario 5 times, and you happen to get that thing, and you're like, hey, cool. But if you're playing through the first time and you're just like surprised, get to play the last 2 scenarios, that's a real feel bad.
Yeah.
Also, this one you just like go around and you just make a bunch of garbage tests that add your skill values together. Like that's
it really does feel like you're doing chores.
Yeah. No, that's a good place for this one. This one sucks.
Also, this dude has 6 fingers.
Oh yeah, it's because it's Azathoth, dude.
It's cool.
It's like the same as the coin one. He's got 6 fingers in that art.
So sick. In the clutches of chaos, Pandemic.
Okay. I have a real hot take on this one. I actually think this is like a. Okay, this might change when I play it next, but I'm gonna say this is a bottom of A tier scenario for me, like very bottom of A tier.
I know.
So I think that
I know.
if
I
you
said it
view
was
this
going to be
as
a
just
yes man, but
okay, so if you view this as a shitty version of Pandemic, yes, this is a garbage scenario. But I actually went over the cards in these, just kind of like brushed over them in preparation for this. That way I was completely not remembering them.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at this one, I choose to view it as a not great, but like a reasonable homage to Arkham Second Edition, where you're running around Arkham trying to put out the gates that keep spawning. I agree that this is a garbage scenario if you choose to view it through the lens of it's just a shitty version of another game. If I want to play that game, I play that game. But if you choose, I think it feels a lot better to view it as you're just running around the town of Arkham trying to stop the gates that open, and that it is like a very boiled down version of the original, or of Arkham Second Edition, especially the Kingsport expansion. I kind of enjoy I think this one's a little bit tough in the same space as the Boundary Beyond, but also like losing it isn't super punishing either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like no downside to losing.
Yeah. And I do kind of enjoy that it forces you to think a little bit differently. And again, it is the same kind of play style that Arkham Second Edition had, where a lot of times you just kind of like, you just got to do things, you know? You got to go around and you're like, this has to happen. Like, I'm going to use what I've got for it. And if I need that stuff in the future, that sucks because I need it now. Does that make sense to you?
I just played this one, and it was the worst 45 minutes I've ever had in this game. So unfortunately, I get your logic, but I can't agree. But I understand where you're coming from, and I respect.
Yeah, this might change if I play it again.
Yeah, it's one of those things where
I'm viewing it now.
With this one, but like maybe the theory is true. I need to not look at this as Arkham Horror the card game, but as like an homage to something else, because the best I've done in this game is when I haven't played Arkham Horror the card game. I just don't play assets and just get rid of all my cards for the things in the game. But maybe looking at it with a different light is the way to start enjoying it, because I would like to enjoy it. I hate how much I hate it, because
you say that you don't like just throwing your stuff away to do the tests,
mm-hmm.
but you like to save archives, and that demands not quite the same but a similar thing from you.
Well, no, because the thing is, like, it's also like you can still do things. I can still play all my assets. I can still play my things. In the Clutches of Chaos, you're basically just doing chores, and then it's also everything in that scenario is 100% random, which is also incredibly frustrating to me. Like,
it's a little bit frustrating, but
yeah, but I'm not like saying you're wrong, because there's opinions like this you can't be wrong, right?
No, that randomness is a good point. We can bump that one down. We can bump this down to like mid B tier, like right in the middle. Yeah. That's a fair point. The randomness in this one does suck. I kind of forgot about how they give you. They're like, yeah, use the second set of locations to randomly determine stuff.
Yeah, to determine also like where the clues. But if you could like. If you could choose where the clues could spawn, or if they spawn with some sort of semblance of something, then that would probably be a bit. But it's like you're in the Clutches of Chaos. That's also the goal of the flavor of it, right? So like,
yeah,
I think they just took a shot, and I understand why it can work for some people and why it also doesn't work for me, right?
Yeah, I think it fits very well into the narrative and into the like how Azathoth is.
Honestly, I agree with that completely. It really fits with the narrative of the whole campaign, especially on my recent playthrough. I really dug it more and how it felt because I played like 3 scenarios in one sitting, which we rarely get the pleasure of doing, right?
Yeah.
It really
We only
fits
did it if we're
narratively.
like powering through it.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that this one's also like, I think this is another one where our opinions are like slightly poisoned from our first time playing through it, where we didn't have a great time, and we didn't play it how. Like we did try to play it like ARKHAM LCG, where we're gonna like, oh, we're gonna set up all our stuff and then play the game. And the game's like, no, that's not what you can do. You gotta like,
Yeah.
you gotta do it now,
Yeah.
right?
I will say,
or things are gonna get real bad.
I will say that the time that we beat this and actually like beat the scenario proper is gonna feel so good.
Yep.
Because we've never even gotten close, the three of us.
No.
No.
It is a very difficult scenario, but like again, there's not a huge downside to losing it, so whatever.
Yeah, so it's not really like it doesn't feel bad to lose.
Going back to the, I think that our first time playing this kind of colored our opinions of it. If I remember, I might be wrong, this was a long time ago, but I think that you were actually in the middle of a playthrough of Pandemic Legacy when we were playing it.
Maybe I could check the dates on that because I know when uploads came, but I mean, like, I don't think it
your first thought was that this was this other game but bad.
Yeah, and it is right, like, but that's also, it might not be because I was playing it, but just because like I know millions of board games, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
It's the reason why, if we can get into it, like what makes it like a bad Pandemic. This is not the place for this. I get what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying too, and also like the scrappiness of it. I can see the excitement there, right? Like where you just have to make it work with what you have.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a great scenario or anything like that.
It's a B tier, yeah.
Yeah, but I am saying that I think that your, and to a lesser extent Bryn's opinions, and mine up until my recent reevaluation of it, are a little bit unfair to the scenario itself.
I respectfully disagree, just because I played it last week and hated it, but I like the discourse it brought.
Yeah. Okay.
Before the Black Throne.
This one go to the top. Is this better than Death's Death? I don't know. I like these both. These are like hard to compare. They're really good for different reasons. I think. We'll continue. It can sit at the very top because Azathoth is cooler than Yig.
Yeah, can confirm.
Or more powerful than Yig, I guess. But this scenario is really hard. It's very satisfying to beat, though. And it's just really, really cool.
Yeah.
It's also like really fun to play. You get to zoom around space. There's a very novel mechanic to it where there's empty space in between things. Azathoth is always lurking over your shoulder. You can't touch him, but he can touch you, and he will over and over again if you don't take his coins.
Yeah, he will.
No, like, I actually don't really... There's no real flaws with this scenario, I don't think.
Yeah.
It's just good. The enemies are as tough as you would expect them to be. But they're not, like, overwhelming. Like, every time Mindless Dancer shows up, you're just like, God, why doesn't this have victory? But at the same time, like, they are the primary threat in this scenario.
Yes, yeah.
So, like, they should be tough and recurrent. There's, like, a slight luck factor that can be a little bit frustrating.
Yes.
But I choose to ignore that because it is on flavor with the Blind Idiot God.
Yeah, and also just, like, there's a lot of counterplay you can do to go against that luck in this one, too, right? Like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you can play around it a bit.
Yeah.
Is this one also does this one use cards from Lead Investigator's deck for empty space?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of garbage, but... Like, on one hand, it's kind of garbage, but it depends a lot on the Investigator you're playing. Like, if you're playing Random Guardian Man, it probably doesn't matter.
But if you're playing, like, I need to get...
Like, Amanda Sharp or, like, Patrice, you're like, please.
Yeah.
I need those.
Please.
And that sucks, but, like, I mean, if it's real issue, you could just home rule it and be like, yeah, here's some encounter cards that or in different sleeves that we're going to use for this.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
yeah, no, just fantastic scenario, fantastic way to cap off the campaign. Like, really, the campaign doesn't deserve this finale.
Yeah.
But this finale deserves a better campaign to go with it, but it is good.
Yeah.
So,
it's a great rendition of Azathoth, too. That's what I really like.
It is. It's like actual, like, this isn't really a video for this, but I don't really blame them for their using Azathoth as just like the generic learning how to play. Because they're like, yeah, he wakes up, game's over, easy.
Yep.
Which is on flavor with him, but this is a much better and more interactive version of that.
Definitely. All right, Travis, are you ready? We're in the Dream Eater cycle.
Right.
Beyond the Gates of Sleep.
A+, baby. This gets to live higher than Blood on the Altar. This is a really good scenario. I like it a lot. I love how it really throws so many things out the window with the lack of encounter deck, and then you're just walking down the steps. It is just like the dream side of this campaign is all going to be very high for me because the narrative part of it blows a lot of the other things they do out of the water for me, and I rank the narrative. I value the narrative of the game very high. But yeah, going down the steps, you have to talk to 2 guardians. You have to keep going down the steps, and then you get to the forest, and then you get to explore the forest, and then there's all the zoogs, and they're pieces of garbage, as you'd expect. And then the cats show up, and they're like, hey, can we eat the zoogs? And you're like, yeah, you can eat the zoogs. Well, they have the zoogs bring food to them, but like, you wish it was the zoogs.
Yeah.
This is like this one really is just a fantastic introduction to this side of the Dream Eaters and to the Dreamlands in particular, with how it throws a lot of the. It's very unbalancing to play as, which I find is very thematic. Where your investigators are probably, like, both the investigators in story and the players in game mechanically are experiencing something that they're not used to, and it's kind of weird. Has them on edge, anxious. They did a really, really good job of transitioning that into gameplay, I feel like. You get to encounter, like, this actually has future story implications with the trapdoor, and it, like, has foreshadowing with the Gug. It's just, it does a fantastic job of introducing the players to the Dreamlands.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Waking Nightmare.
This one's a bottom of A tier for me. And to be honest, the thing it loses the most points on, I feel like, is it's just not hard enough. I think this is a super easy scenario. Once you get to the point where the webs are spreading, if you have half a brain, you can figure out, like, there's one location they have to go through to get to the rest of the hospital. Like,
stop it there.
Yeah. And the rest of it is just kind of a formality. It's like a good way to introduce. It loses a lot of points on the difficulty for me, though. This is one of the few scenarios that I think is, like, genuinely too easy. But it does a good job introducing the spider side, Isla Chinacha, and there's nothing too notable about it. A small pet peeve I have about it is they introduce the doctor as, like, having a name, and then just, like,
nothing
throw
happens.
her off to the side.
Yeah.
Hey, check out this character. She's got a name. You're like, oh, cool. And they're like, she'll never show up again.
And you're like, oh,
okay.
Good, cool.
Cool. And it's like, it's not like a throwaway like the, like Jazz Mulligan in the Dunwich Legacy. It's like she has, like, storylines and stuff. Like, she's part of the intro and the epilogue for the scenario, and then they just, she's part of the intro and the interlude, sorry, and then they just ignore her. So, whatever. But yeah, all in all, like, mechanically, it's a fine scenario. The infestation bag's, like, a little bit clumsy, but, like, it's kind of neat. Yeah, I just wish it was actually a little bit more difficult.
Heck yeah. The Search for Kadath.
This can go to. It's going to be like really high up there.
Yep.
Let's go to the top of A plus. So, things I like about this one. We'll start with that first because I'm going to start with things I dislike a lot. There's a lot of things I like about this scenario. Again, I'm a big fan of the narrative and the thematic experience for this game. Really, really enjoy visiting all the different parts of the Dreamlands and getting to explore them. And like you play this scenario and you're like, man, I don't even want to do better. I just want to look at more.
Yeah.
Right? I just want to read more story and like learn. It's just so. It feels like it's a whole open world that you actually get to go around and explore. They really knock that out of the park. The only real complaint I have against this scenario, and that keeps it from being an S tier for me, is that each of the worlds is like effectively the same, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
There are definitely variations between them, but they all follow a very similar pattern of one story. There's like 3-ish locations, 3 or 4 locations for the most part. One location is like general boon for flipping it over. One location is find the signs of the god if you did something else at another location, and then the third location is do the thing. And that only really shines through or becomes apparent after like 4 or 5 playthroughs, I think. Yeah, that's my only real complaint about this one.
Cool.
Lots of cool backgrounds. I guess another small complaint is some of these I would like to see in standalones, and that have them in this scenario. Exploring these locations in this scenario makes them less likely to be in standalones, I guess.
My hope is that with this new release schedule, we get the opportunity to revisit things like this and like different stories. So my fingers are crossed because I hope the same thing.
I hope we get like more mini campaigns.
I agree.
That are just like 3 or 4 scenarios.
Yeah, for like $30. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly,
what's next?
I think that's going to happen. I think it's a smart decision for their part.
Yeah. My biggest fear with this distribution model is that they're going to overload some player cards. I hope
agree.
that doesn't happen.
I agree.
I would be like very happy to see one. Again, this isn't the video for it at all, but one big player card expansion like they're doing for Into the Earth or whatever, and then like one big campaign, and then like 2
small campaigns.
Smaller campaigns, or like a small campaign, 2 standalones, or a small campaign, 1 standalone, or something like that throughout the year.
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty baller. And then, of course, a Return 2.
Yeah. I agree.
Because I am going to be so salty if they don't keep giving me Return 2 boxes to store stuff in.
I think they're going to. This isn't the video for this. We should actually like people were talking about this. I think we should do a video. I think Return 2 boxes are going to keep
this
going.
one.
I think they're going to keep going.
Do it right now. It could be a 2.5-hour video. Force them to watch the entire video to find this section that they care about.
Yeah. Maybe we'll record that on Wednesday while it's still relevant, because it's... let's go on. 1,000 Shapes of Horror. You're in the nameless. The unnameable, sorry. The unnameable.
This one's actually kind of dirt. I think this is the lowest point of this campaign for me. This could be... This can be slightly behind Curtain Call. It's not a bad scenario or anything. It's just like doesn't excite me. It's not like really compelling. There's some things to like about exploring. The whole haunted house is something that they do quite good, I think. But it's just meh.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, what's next?
That Dark Side of the Moon. You go into the moon and then out of the moon, and the alarm level's there.
Yeah, this one is top of A tier, I think. I really enjoy being on the moon, but there's some big negatives to this. Like, there's a lot of things about the moon that are really cool. There's the cast from Saturn, and then there's like Temple of the Moon Lizard. You show up and there's actually a moon lizard, and you're like, why wouldn't there be?
Yep.
The alert level is like a little bit punishing. And I kind of wish that they had made it like easier to get alarm down, but like more costly. Like, instead of having you make like a foot 5 test or whatever, it's like a foot 4 test or foot 3 test, but it takes 2 actions to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Make it more consistent to do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, Bryn brought up a good point on this one, which is true. The goon can never get on the ship at the end. Their alarm level's just too high. all the time.
I mean, I think that's kind of thematic. Where
I know,
if
I
you
agree.
just
I
don't
agree completely.
go
I agree
around and
completely.
shoot people, it's not really an issue.
Yeah.
But I also really like the first time playing this, where you go through the dark side of the moon, and then you go through the center, and you come on the other side, and it's the exact same with the light side of the moon, and you're just like, I don't know what I expected.
Yeah, that is nice. I agree.
That's really funny. But yeah, like this, playing it multiple times, this one is like a little bit too punishing with the alarm level. Not punishing in terms of like encounter cards or the like negatives you get for not finishing it. I just think that it should be like slightly easier to lower your alarm level in that first half of the scenario.
Yeah.
Or like alternatively have something like much more punishing but immediately visible. Just like as an extra incentive to be like, hey, you really don't want your alarm level to go up.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine this one will be good on the return too. They'll play around with the alarm level a bit more.
So
because like Carcosa, this one has the benefit of being a really good campaign, so they can just like improve areas as opposed to fix areas.
Yeah, so it's not like this scenario is actually garbage.
Yeah.
I'm actually super hyped for Return to the Circle Undone.
I am too. Because
I'm actually very excited for that one.
The mood of Circle Undone is really good. I just think the scenarios don't live up to that as much as they could.
Yeah, no, the story is really good for it. The scenarios are just kind of meh.
Yeah.
Point of no return.
Ghoul Gang.
Ghoul Gang. This one is better than Blood on the Altar. This one is worse than the Search for Kadath. No, that's right. That's right. I like Ghoul Gang. This one does give you a very good feel of stumbling around in the dark. Gives you... It's very similar to Beyond the Gates of Sleep, actually. In that it does a really good job of just painting the picture of the Dreamlands for you, but a different part of the Dreamlands, the Underworld.
Mm-hmm.
The mechanics of this one are particularly punishing, but they are difficult enough to make it like a challenge. My biggest complaint about this one is I actually wish that the dole was like this is our fault for having built it up in our little mythos of us playing the board games, but like the dole should be much more punishing.
Yeah.
It should be a lot scarier than just like you murder him and you're like, cool.
Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah. We're gonna do a little bit of upkeep here as well, Justin. We're gonna slide those 2 Dunwich encounters down to the C tier, I think. Maybe the Witching Hour as well. And we're gonna slide Waking Nightmare down to B tier, I think. And Threads of Fate for the Gurg, it can go down to the A tier. Yeah. Make that a little bit better representative of a bell curve here.
Sick. All right, Where the Gods Dwell.
This one's really cool.
It is cool.
I like this one a lot too. This is another A+ for me, I think. Finding Nyarlathotep, super cool, super thematic. Going through like the icy wastes of the Plateau of Ling to find him, and then like all the different copies of him and stuff. It's a really, really fun scenario.
Yeah.
It's completely different. People say it sucks for solo play, but I literally don't care. If I was going to play this game, I would play like I'm going to say it. I don't understand why you would ever play it solo. Like, just play it two-handed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the game is so much better that way.
I've been playing a lot of Marvel Champions solo because it actually works, and it made me realize just how much more fun this game is two-handed solo, so I agree. Arkham Horror card game is just better two-handed solo.
You have infinitely more deck building options and stuff. Anyway, Where the Gods Dwell. This is better than... It's like up there with like Dim Carcosa and Shattered Eons, but I'm not quite sure where. I'll talk. Yeah, we'll put it there, and I'll talk about it for a bit and see what I like about it. I really like the story leading up to it with the blind monk or whatever, and you get to trip him and then kick him in the well, or you can just like pump a bunch of bullets into him. That's fun. I really like that enemies that wouldn't be able to spawn other places just keep pouring out of the barren wastes or whatever they're called.
Mm-hmm.
I also really like this sort of shift that happens halfway through the scenario when you get inside the interlude with Nyarlathotep. The story for this one is so good.
Mm-hmm.
And then like having to find copies of him, like the interplay between players where you get to trade cards around, and you're just like, yeah, it is actually really funny if you're just like you're looking at your hand, someone else is at your location, and they're like, you have one of those laws of Vigroth, and you're like, I can't actually answer this, and you're like, here, and they're like, oh sweet, a copy of Nyarlathotep. Wait, why would you give this to me?
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, here you go.
It also has, this scenario has also brought my favorite moment when I had 9 treachery cards in my hand as Gloria.
Yeah, you're just sitting there, you're like,
that's yeah. But I wasn't scared, which was the best part.
yeah, no, like they did a really good job of designing the difficulty of the hidden cards for this campaign and this like scenario in particular, where they aren't crippling to you; they're just like annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get enough of them, for them, they will become overwhelming at some point. But they're not like you don't draw. You're just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, okay, it's like those weaknesses that are like when you take a horror, take a damage as well, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Where you draw them, you're like, yeah, I should get rid of this at some point, but I don't mind it right now. The only thing I wish for this scenario is that like they gave you slightly more time if you get the fuse Nyarlathotep.
Yes, I agree.
Whether that is like reset the current or like go to the last act or something like that, or the last agenda and set it's doomed to 0, so you have like 3 turns or something like that for it.
Mm-hmm.
Or hard 3 turns for it. But great scenario. Yeah, no, that's right. I like it more than Shattered Eons. Actually, I like it more than Dim Carcosa too. And bump it up there, yeah.
Cool.
Nyarlathotep he's a sick elder one.
Yeah, and I hope we see
one.
more of him because he kind of is the one that fits, that can work in multiple environments.
Oh, I would not be surprised at all to see us get a campaign for Nyarlathotep that is like, I bet we'll get like our own Egypt campaign. Mm-hmm. It's its own thing, but I also bet we'll get like a Nyarlathotep one that's like divided into 4 2-parts, each one for like a cult of Nyarlathotep, like they did for Eldritch.
Yeah.
With the bloated woman and the haunter in the dark and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. The god of the bloody tongue.
Tongue.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that would be sick.
It would be sick.
And you get to the end and like Nyarlathotep is more powerful for like they're very difficult, but at the end for each one you beat Nyarlathotep is easier.
Yeah.
Like a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild sort of dealy.
Yeah, definitely. All
Weaver
right.
of the Cosmos. This one is also really good. This is another A+ scenario. At this point, I think we can shunt Lost in Time and Space down to A. Yeah. Look, the best thing about this scenario is that the boss is made from 5 cards, and you get to physically spin it around the web. I think it's actually. I have like a massive bias towards the ultimate scenarios where you get to actually, it's like the entire payoff for the story and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to shove this one to like, they can go sit behind. This is better than Blood on the Altar, but worse than Point with No Return for me, I think. And the only reason that it gets to sit behind Point No Return is because it's so damn easy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've ever lost this one. Or been in serious.
We only lost it once in our first playthrough because we didn't realize how important it was to go down the web.
Oh yeah, no, I mean like we never like died. We never lost to Atlacha.
Yeah.
Is the part I'm thinking about. Yeah, no, like the whole you get to attack different parts of her body. She's so involved in spinning the web that she doesn't notice until you've broken all of her legs. That she's like, "Excuse me."
Yeah. Please don't do that.
Yeah, really fun scenario. It's like really, I'm kind of a sucker for the scenarios that have like a gimmick for the boss.
Mm-hmm. I do think
like
these two,
huge gimmick.
Where the Gods Dwell and Weaver the Cosmos, really gave me a boost in like what a boss fight could be in this game, right?
Yeah.
And I can't wait to play Innsmouth, man.
Yeah, they're super creative, and you're just like, man, we got, and like you look back at like Lost in Time and Space, and you're like, really, you can just like shoot Azith off to death?
Yeah.
Or I mean, you can just shoot Yogg-Sothoth off to death? Like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
That's why like I think that like Blood on the Altar and Lost in Time and Space, compared directly to these other scenarios, are a little bit higher than they deserve to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also taking into account like when they were released a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Like as we get later on, I have higher expectations for things. But yeah, no, the scenario's fun. That's where it goes.
Yeah.
What's next?
All right, do you want to do the core or do you want to do the standalones?
Oh, these standalones. Curse of Rugru is a C tier, top C tier though. Union and Disillusion and Disappearance can go live in D tier, by the way. So can Echoes of the Past, actually. I decided the D tier is the tier of scenarios, so I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
This one's neat. It's tough, kind of. It's actually like a perfect standalone for teaching people the game. If they just want, like, you've played through the first campaign and they just want like a little bit of taste of what else the game can offer, because it's very different. It's very thematic, where you go around the bayou and the wolves hunting around and stuff like that. It's very relatable to real life. To like, you're not just like, ooh, Eldritch Manifestation. You're like, here you're going to the Dreamlands.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like there? You're like, it's the Dreamlands. You just gotta experience going to the moon, baby.
Yeah.
But it's very relatable with the whole werewolf thing. That being said, it's kind of a mess scenario.
Yeah.
It's not super difficult.
You could tell it was also really early in the design. There's a lot of stuff they just don't do anymore.
Yeah, which again is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's better than Witching Hour. This can actually go sit like slightly above Heart of the Elders. Yeah.
Cool.
All right, next up we got
Carnival. We just played this one today.
Yeah, this one can go sit just above Curse of Rugru, I think. I'll be honest, these days the only thing that this was like mind blowing when it came out. I know that you like to tell the story of like when I got it and like, Justin, you're gonna love this, and we played it and you did.
Yep.
The only thing this has going for it is like the clockwise gimmick. The rest of the scenario is pretty garbage. Not garbage, but like meh.
Yeah, just fine.
Also, I lost a lot of respect for Knibwa today.
We won't say any spoilers, but probably in like a month or two from now, you'll understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, if you remember.
Yeah.
Okay, what's up next?
Labyrinth of Lunacy.
D tier, baby. This can go live down like in front of Heart of the Elders, so at least you only have to play it once.
This is the one that we all voted as the lowest rated one when we did the trivia show.
Yeah, this can go in front of the Undimensioned Unseen as well, actually, because it only takes you like an hour.
Yeah.
I still want to play this one for like the epic multiplayer, but as it is, it's
you know, someone in my Discord said we should do it as a Discord thing where we're in different voice channels, and then you go into each other's to when you have to like do something. So there's like 3 groups of 4. I think that could be like the way we can actually do it. So
that would actually be really cool. Yeah, no, I'd be down for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a neat scenario. I mean, like, it's theoretically a neat scenario, but like playing it without the epic multiplayer, which is the only way I've played it, is very disappointing. So.
Yeah. Eternal Slumber and Night Usurpers. We've been kind of like grading these ones as a pair. but you can do them separately if you want.
Dude, these ones are so fucking hard.
I want to play them again. I've only played them once.
Brennan and I, back like right when we first had the first sniffs of COVID in the Western world, we spent like an entire afternoon grinding these with just standalone decks, and they're so hard. I really like the flavor of them though. The Egyptian, I'm a big fan, big sucker for the Egyptian stuff. We're gonna plop them down. We're gonna shove Unspeakable Oath and Blood on the Altar down to A tier. We're gonna stick these in the A+ tier. I love the flavor for them. I like the story for them quite a bit. But man, they're hard. They're so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Bound and Beyond and Phantom Truth can probably go down to B tier as well.
Oh, you went too far.
The Pallid Mask can also probably go down there. And no, Pallid Mask's like a little bit better than... Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
It has been a while since I played these, but they demand you to be like very good at a lot of things. And the only reason I rank these so high is because they're standalones. If these were part of a campaign, I would think they're probably much too difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But these are like the shit test for the game.
Yeah.
You know? If you can... they definitely take some luck to beat, but if you can like beat them, like your deck's probably pretty good. What you got going on is probably where you want to be. So...
Sick. Murder at the Excelsior Hotel.
This one has very high replayability, but the scenario itself is a little bit meh. This one can live at the top of A tier. Yeah. So things I like about this one, 10 different endings. Really fun thematic thing where you're like, especially for people who are playing it the first time, you're like, yeah, you got the dagger, you actually killed that man. They're like, what? The murder at the Excelsior Hotel was me. I did it. You're like, yeah. Things I don't like. There's like definitely a period of probably 5 or 6 rounds every time you play this where one person is relegated to making brain tests against the cops.
Yeah.
And then like one other person is probably spending half their action, maybe not half, but like a third of their actions chasing down and talking to guests, which I'm not a fan of. But once you, like, the first half of this scenario is very monotonous and boring, but once you get to the second half, it's like pretty good. So that's why it gets an A for me.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, and then these 3. Oh, yeah. Congratulations if you've made it this far. This is a long video.
It is.
So these 3 I look at, I'm grading them on a different criteria from the rest of them a little bit. Because the rest of these are intended to be a fun, replayable experience. They're intended to fit into the larger part of a story. They're intended to provide a challenge and tell a story to the players. These 3 are intended to, I think, exclusively teach you the game. There is like a plot to them because like you should have a plot if you're gonna play them in succession, right? You're not just like play these 3 unconnected scenarios. There has to be reason to play them in a row, but that was not the focus of these scenarios, I don't think. So the Gathering, this one is intended to teach you how the basic mechanics of the game, and I'll be honest, I think this does a fantastic scenario of that, or fantastic job of that. It does a very good job of guiding you through the absolute basics. It teaches you moving between different locations. It teaches you to investigate. It teaches you to fight enemies. It teaches you about victory. It teaches you about boss monsters, and it teaches you about parlaying and how sometimes other areas of the game are going to be unlocked later. And for that, I think it deserves an A. I think it does a very good job of that. Yeah, these can just sit at the top because they're not being marked quite on the same criteria as the other ones. So where they actually fit in with the other scenarios doesn't matter as much.
Sure.
And feel free to field any questions you have about these.
Oh no, I mean,
the
I
Midnight
agree.
Mask. This one is intended to teach you about doom management with all the acolytes and the Wizard of the Order and the high doom count is intended to teach you about the randomness of the game. You don't know if things are going to be different every time you play it. It has a large map. It really starts to show off what the game can do. It shows you that things aren't always what you're expecting them to be. What with the cultist that comes from the agenda deck, one of them. And it shows you like the variety of ways that you can defeat enemies in this game as well. With all the cultists having alternate ways to kill them instead of just like slamming damage into them until the red dice or the health token is equal to the number on them. This one also teaches you that your previous, it's very tame, but your previous decisions have impacts on future scenarios. And also it teaches you that not that running out of time on a scenario isn't always bad. That for some scenarios there is a trade-off to be made with how much you accomplish versus how much the game or how much time you spent, right? You can get a bad ending, but maybe getting the extra cultist is worth it, right? I think for that, this one just happens to luck into being a fun, replayable scenario that tests a variety of things. And I think that is why we say it's such a good scenario so often, is by nature of what it's trying to teach, it has high replayability. Mm-hmm. But it was not intended to be like a fun, replayable scenario like a lot of these other ones. That being said, I'm going to stick it in the A+ tier. I think that for what it teaches people, it deserves to be A tier with The Gathering because it does a good job of it. But the fact that it's also just a good scenario outside of that gets to be an A+. Okay, and Devour Below. This scenario teaches you a couple things. It teaches you that, once again, the impact of your previous actions, previous scenarios, mattered later with the cultist spawning. It shows you that boards are not always static. With the woods, you're wandering through the woods, and like you exclude two of the six, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it shows you that getting clues isn't always dependent on your book. Sometimes you need other investigators to do that for you. It teaches you that sometimes you can't always win the way that you want to win. Sometimes you just don't have the opportunity to get the best ending. And lastly, it teaches you that in the mythos, ancient ones are big and scary.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, they
and
are.
You should be afraid of them. They'll kill you.
Yeah.
And quite often, the best way to stop that is to prevent them from being summoned in the first place. I think that while this is kind of a garbage scenario, and lots of people complain because it's hard to quote-unquote win outside of the Leah Chandler ending, I understand where they're viewing it from, but I don't think that they're viewing it quite from the same place that the designers viewed it from when they were designing it. I'm also going to give this one an A. Because all the things that it's intended to teach, I think it does a good job of showing off. Mm-hmm. Again, judged by the other the criteria of the other scenarios here, it's not a particularly replayable scenario. It's not a particularly fun scenario, but it does do a very good job of showing off the harsh parts of the game. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like, I think that's ultimately why this game is also so successful, is because the design intentions of the core set and their scenarios worked, right? Like, ultimately the designers did what they wanted to do and intended, and it worked.
Yeah, I think this game is actually really difficult to get into. just with the core sets. Not only does your deck suck ass,
Yeah.
But also you don't really get to play the game as most of it is intended, right?
Yeah.
You really do kind of need like the core set, and the first 3 scenarios are literally just there to teach you what the game has to offer at their most base level.
And
then you should really have like a couple of other scenarios to play to get a feel for what the game's actually like.
that's honestly why I imagine Fantasy Flight is kicking themselves for finally just now going to the distribution model they're going to, because it works so much better for people to be able to play the game. So now in the future, we don't need to be like, you have to buy a deluxe set and like 6 Mythos packs. Now it's just like, buy this box. Buy
Any other box too. But
yeah. So I think
no, I think that what we have coming up is with the new distribution model is, I don't want to say a revitalization of the game, because from what the head designer said in their interview on the Mythos Busters, that the game is actually just making more money year over year.
Yeah, and I mean,
which is great news. But sorry, what were you gonna say?
And I get what you're saying. How like, because it isn't really a revitalization. This game it's doing better and better. But I do truly think that it's like a design revitalization. They're going to have a lot more control.
It's more repositioning.
Yeah, the designers are going to have a lot more control over what they can do and how to get product into new players' hands. And because honestly, like the game is great and I love it, and it's my favorite board game I've ever played, obviously, because we're still making content for it now more than ever, right? It's still very hard to recommend to people. And now I can be like, buy this, right? Yeah,
it can just be like, hey, like, you tell them, like, you buy a core set, and then you pick up, like, the 2, I mean, you can't tell them right now, but, like, in 6 months or whatever, you can be like, pick up these 2 boxes, and, like, boom, you've got a game.
And, like,
that's still a little bit pricier than a lot of board games, where, like, core set will run you $30, disregarding any rumors of a combined core set or whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, $30 or $30 to $50 depending where you purchase, and like your $30 American is what I'm getting at.
Yes, yeah. It's still pricey, and like you can buy like Spirit Island for $70 and get like a lot of game out of that too, right? But
yeah, and then like 110-ish for the 2 new expansions, the 2 Edge of the World stuff. That's still like $150 investment, $160 depending on shipping costs, right? Which is like not the easiest sell, but it's a lot easier than like, hey, go track down all this garbage.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, like, but the thing is, like, if someone's looking for a narrative-based game with a lot of player decisions in terms of like what you do in the game and also the cards that you have in your deck, I can't think of anything better than this, right?
Like Marvel Champions is like pretty good, but it falls on its face when it comes to the narrative stuff.
I agree, and I've been playing a lot more, as I was saying, a lot more Marvel Champions, and I'm actually having like a fun time with it. But it's a popcorn game. Well, this is like, you know, an 8-part movie.
Yeah, and then, like, Lord of the Rings is kind of the precursor to this game, but it also struggles with
narrative,
the deck building part, I think, more.
I agree.
Like, the scenarios have an overarching story throughout the cycle or whatever, but they're so disconnected.
Yeah.
They're slightly disconnected in terms of the story, but also like very disconnected in terms of deck building, where they want you to build a unique deck for every scenario.
Yes,
with
this
no
is
progression
truly
within
like
your deck.
The perfect combination of like everything I've wanted from a game like this. So, we should end this video here, but I mean, like, also, I think we should, as YouTubers, if anyone's still here, for you, me, Travis, and Bryn, this is something that I've always wanted to do, which is kind of just like a free talk kind of thing as well, where we can just like do this, talk about the game, because we never actually just get to talk about the game. There's always a subject that we have to deal with, right? So if
that's usually why you make videos, because you have something you want to talk about. But
yeah. But like, if people want to see more kind of like discussion style stuff where we just talk about things of the game, let us know in the comments. In addition, we're not going to talk about the rumored core set, because we don't want to further perpetuate rumors that may or may not be true. We're waiting for official announcements for all that stuff. And last but not least, let's just scroll through Travis's tier list one last time before we close this video out.
Justin and Bryn, if you were still here, do you have anything that you find truly shocking, or you think
honestly,
not
the
that
only
you
thing
disagree with personally, but that you think I would have liked or disliked more?
To me, the only thing that's truly shocking was In the Clutches of Chaos. But I understand where you're coming from, because I'm not an angry person who, when I see someone who says something I disagree with, I get angry. But like,
no, that's wrong.
But otherwise, I agree with like your logic, and all of it is sound, right? And this is why, viewers, we did 3 separate tier lists because of this. However, I have exciting news for you. Now that I have everybody's tier lists, we're going to do a video in the near future where I'm going to stat out everyone's tier list to see what they scored each campaign, where their campaign rating actually sits. And then also, I'm going to average out our tier lists and give you the official PBG tier list using all of it put together with math, because math does not lie when you take 3 completely different opinions and put them together.
Look at me dragging Dream Eaters up probably a whole like 2 or 3 points.
Oh, no. Dream Eaters is high up for all of us.
Really sick. I mean, like, I had 5 Dream Eaters scenarios in my A+ tier.
Yeah, you're going to do a lot for the math, but like, it's...
Also, I might be pulling the Devour below up to like a C tier.
Yeah. Things I've noticed is that I am definitely the hardest rater out of the group. I have the least in A's and up for all of our tier lists.
Yeah, like we could probably average out mine a little bit more, but
the thing is, I feel like if you do that, if you start getting into those nitpickies, it's kind of like leaves the emotion of the tier list behind. And these are emotional tier lists. Like, that's what a tier list is. For something like this, where it's entirely up to what you feel about it, right?
I mean, if you want to like actually get an accurate depiction, you could just like average them out by literal number ranking. Because for my list, like, yeah, I have lots of A's, but like the Paladin Mask, Black Star's Rise, Boundary Beyond, and Sea of Archives are probably like actually average.
Yeah. And it's also really like, the thing is also with tier lists for why we didn't do a group one, is because everyone looks at A+, A, B, C, D differently, right? Like, because with some people, they'll look at B and they'll be like, B means not great. But B, to me, just means good. It's a good scenario. It's not great. It's not bad. And even C is like, it's an okay scenario, right? So like, everyone views it a little bit differently. And
I mean, that's kind of how I view it too. B is like average, and anything above that is good. But like, I like playing the game, so most of the scenarios should be good, right? Or else I wouldn't play it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Let us know if there's any sort of content you want to see coming up in the future, especially on like discussion-based content. If you just want to have us wheeling and dealing and talking about whatever in the game, I mean, I'll do it. I enjoy talking with my 2 good friends about this game. Who would have thought, right? Who would have freaking thought? Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one, and as always, GG's.